Hey everyone, welcome back. This is Building with Buchanan, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make your first part in Autodesk Fusion 360. So let's get rid of our data panel so that we got a little more room to work here, and make this a little bigger so we can see what's all going on. So you're going to notice right off the bat that the screen is white and there's pretty much nothing happening here. So a 3D modeling program basically gives you an unlimited amount of imaginary space to build something. So before we start making anything, what we need to do is basically start at some kind of imaginary origin point, and usually the best way to start new shapes in Fusion is to make a 2D sketch first, and then we're going to make a 3D extrusion of that sketch. So what does this look like? Well, first I'm going to create a sketch. And it's going to ask me to make the sketch on one of these three planes. So what these three planes correspond to, if you look up at the top corner up here, imagine that this cube is some kind of imaginary object that you're making. If you look at it from the top view, and we can select that top view, and you see our view rotates around, we are now looking at your imaginary part from the top-down view. If you ever get lost and not sure where to go, just hit the home button and everything zooms back out to a view which you should recognize of your part. So the other two planes, it's fairly self-explanatory as well. The front view is what we're looking at if we were looking straight on at the front of your part. Same with the right, that's looking at your part from the right side. So to start my first part, I'm going to use the front view. Okay, now we have basically still an empty space, except we have a couple of grid lines to follow. So these two grid lines, they are centered here on a point called the origin. So it's very handy to use the origin when you are modeling parts because you can use the origin to do a few functions later on. Like a mirror function is a really useful function for if you just want to make one side of a part and then just mirror it, and you don't have to do all the work of making all of those shapes a second time. And if you do it on the origin, then you can just pick your origin plane, like this red line here, as the mirroring plane to mirror everything off of. Just to keep things simple, I'm just going to say always start your part in the middle. So what I'm going to start with first, I'm going to make a rectangle. So I could make a 2-point rectangle, but actually what I want to make is a center point rectangle because I want to keep this origin point as the middle of my shape. So I'm going to click once, click and drag over, and you can zoom in and zoom out with the wheel if you need to. That's the middle scroll button on your mouse. And there's a couple different ways to input the numbers that you need. So if I want a box that's 100 millimeters by 66, I can just really slowly, accurately get it to exactly that point. There's another way to do this too. I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I'm going to make my part here 25 millimeters by 25 millimeters. And so what I'm just doing right now, I'm typing in that number. So the first number was 25, and then I hit tab, and it skipped to the second number. And now I'm going to hit enter, and it locks those two numbers in. All right, at this point, I'm going to finish this sketch. So this is just a two-dimensional view of a three-dimensional shape that I want to make later. And I like to keep my sketches nice and simple by only putting one or two shapes on them and then doing the 3D process afterwards and then adding more sketches to the shape later. You'll see what this looks like in a minute. So I'm going to hit finish so that I finish that sketch. I'm not quite sure where I am in space right now, so I'm just going to go back to my home view. There we are. We're looking right at the front of our part, and we get this box. All right, so our 2D part is in. Next, I want to make this a 3D part. So I'm going to use the button right next to sketch called Extrude. So what this does is it allows us to make a three-dimensional part in either direction based off of the 2D sketch that we just made. So let's bring this out, say 10 millimeters. So it's the same as making the box. You could click and drag and just like really accurately get to exactly the point where you want. Or you can use this menu over here on the side, and we can type in the distance that we want. So maybe I want to go 15. Why not? And there's a bunch of other functions in here that we can do too. I'm just going to keep this video simple. We're just going to make a really simple shape. Okay, so now we got a cube. Back to the home view. rotate all around the place, and I'm totally lost. Go back to the home view. There we are again. If you need to rotate your view, hold down the shift button and click down that middle scroll wheel button, and then you can rotate things around. Just be careful because it's really hard to get exactly where you need it to go. So you can also use this cube here to tell where you want to go. So let's say I want to look at the left side. I can rotate around by, if I click that top corner, everything moves over to there. If I click on the left face, it looks straight at the left face. If I want to look at the front, that edge there, something like that, it gives me all of these options too. Okay, so next up, I want to make another sketch because I want to add some parts to this. So I'm going to create a sketch, but this time, instead of making it on one of those two original planes, I want to put it on the top plane. So I'm now looking from the top down. And I'm going to make a circle, and let's put our circle, how about here? There's lots of layout tools that you can use too. So if I just hover my mouse around this corner here and then hover my mouse around this corner here, and you walk up a little bit, there you see a little triangle which formed. That usually tells you that that's the midpoint of the shape that you're making. So I don't know, I'm not really going to be too accurate about where I put my circle here. I'm just going to put one in and finish the sketch and go back to the home view so we can see what's going on. Okay, now I'm going to extrude this part. I can extrude it, this part. So I can extrude it up if I want to, and I can type in a number. I can type in a angle if I want, so a taper angle of, let's say 60 degrees would give me a pretty wonky shape. I don't think I want that. Go away, 0. There we go, that's better. Oh, now I wasn't done playing with my part, but that's okay. We can still fix this. There's two ways to fix this new part that we just made. Down here is a history bar. So it'll show you the sequence of all of the parts that you've put together. So this is a really handy tool to be able to find exactly the part you want and go back and edit it later. There's another way too. We can go into bodies and we can select our shape from there. We can also go into our original sketches. So let's say maybe I want this circle to be bigger. You can also find that sketch right there. If you right click and do edit sketch, or it's the same up here, if you right click and do edit sketch, and let's take this circle. I want to redimension it. Instead of 5, I'm going to say it's going to be 6. There we go. And if I finish the sketch, watch what happens. Oh, I maybe should have made it bigger so you could see. But that whole cylinder now turned into a bigger shape. So it remembers all of the sort of features that come afterwards in the history. And so if you change a sketch in the original part, it's going to change that too. So if I changed this first sketch, and if I made this box 15 tall and hit finish sketch, then you can see my whole part all of a sudden becomes a whole lot shorter. If I do Control Z and Control Z, that undoes that, and we're back to our original shape. So this feature here, I want to edit this feature. While we're on the subject of features and faces and bodies and sketches and all this, maybe I should just go over a little bit of terminology. So a sketch is a 2-dimensional shape. A body is the 3-dimensional shape that comes out of it. A feature is something that happens afterwards. So a feature would be, let's say, like this is called a fillet. And what a fillet does, it adds a bit of a round over. Oh, that's not going to work. A fillet of 2. It rounds the corner over of any edge that you want. So if I filleted this edge here, 2 millimeters, then we would get some nice rounded corners on it. That kind of thing is called a feature. It's not really a sketch. It's not really a new body. It's just something that you're modifying of one of your bodies. So let's go back into our feature here, and I'm going to show you a couple more things that you can do with the Extrude tool. So first off, we can change the direction that it comes in. So instead of clicking and dragging this up and down, we can decide maybe it's going to go symmetrically both ways. So what that means is if I'm 11 millimeters up and down, it'll go up 5.5 millimeters and it'll go down 5.5 millimeters. Um, the extent, we'll get into that one later. We'll say 11 millimeters, and maybe instead of joining these two pieces together, I want to cut that piece out. So if I hit OK, now what's happened? I've extruded, but instead of adding an extrusion on, I've actually cut the shape out. And there it said that my fillet had an error because I built that feature on a body which no longer exists. Okay? So, and then you see this is red here because that's just not going to work at all. So we may as well just delete that fillet out of there. Okay, almost done with this video. I just want to show you one more thing. It's a pretty cool tool called the Revolve tool. So I'm going to make one more sketch. I'm going to make it up here. Let's do another circle, something like that. Sure, that works. Finish that sketch. And instead of extruding, I'm going to revolve this. So revolve is another 3D shape that we can make. You need to select which face or which kind of profile you actually want to revolve. So I'm going to select this one. And then with the revolve, we also need to select the axis that we're revolving around. So what that means is you need to pick some kind of straight line that you want this shape to revolve around. So if I revolved it around this shape here, that is now cutting out a revolved circle out of my shape there. So maybe I don't want to cut, maybe I want to join it to the other one. Now we've made a little donut sticking out the side. Maybe that's not the axis we want. Maybe I want to select, say, this axis. And that's making some kind of fun loopy ring thing. I don't know what it's for, but it is there now. So voila, a beautiful first shape. This is just a basic kind of introduction. Obviously, like there's a whole set of other tools that we can create here. Your sketches, you don't need to make just regular old rectangles and stuff like that. When you're in the sketch mode, if you go into create, there's all of these different kind of shapes that we can make. When you're in the 3D mode, there's all of these other different kinds of 3D shapes that we can make too. So really the best way to learn this program, I find, is to just sort of start exploring with it, extrude a few shapes, cut a few shapes out of it, add a few other things, and there's always handy dandy Google. If you don't know what something is, you can always just Google it and watch a quick little video on how somebody else has used that tool. So there's going to be more videos to come, but this is just a really basic one to get you started in Fusion. Hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you later.